Hey guys, welcome back to a Slice of Empathy podcast. It has been a month. Like many of you, the holidays have just been crazy. There's just been so much going on, with work and running a YouTube channel and the podcast, and of course the holidays and shopping and navigating events and whatnot. So it's just been kind of crazy. So I think on this episode, I'm hoping it comes out tomorrow, the 23rd, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that, kind of starting in. So I think this episode's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about present events versus past events. So I figured for this episode, we're going to have just a little bit more of a holiday focus. And I think it's fitting because, again, there's just been so many things that have happened. And so just to kind of sum it up, I think this episode's going to be about my grandfather's passing. He just passed away a little over a week ago now, as well as navigating, the holidays and some past trauma. So it's going to be a little bit of an intermix of, current events, maybe related to some of the things in my past. And the more that I thought about it, the more that I realized I didn't talk too much about my grandparents in my past childhood recordings, podcast episodes. When I went through my childhood experiences, there's so much to condense that I left out like a lot of details, and just kind of focus on what was relevant. I'll start off with this episode. December 23rd is a bit bittersweet for me for a couple of reasons. And you guys may remember this in one of my first couple of episodes where I talked about the fact that I was in a receiving home for a little bit, about 3 months, I believe it was, and I was released on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, because I was very close to going to a foster home and not going back to my family. That literally 2 days before Christmas, I got to go, I was released and I went to live with my dad. So it was a bit bittersweet, how that happened. And, 2 days before Christmas, me going back to my family after spending 3 months in a receiving home situation. Also, this date, it's bittersweet because back in 2013, for those of you who know me, it was a rough year for many reasons, and I will get to that a little bit more in other episodes as we get closer to that. But, of course, earlier that year, my husband's mom passed away, my grandfather-in-law passed away, and just 2 days before Christmas, one of my cats passed away. And that was a very tough year because I had just lost my job. I think it was 2 days before that Friday. I had just lost my job, and one of my cats had gotten sick all of a sudden. She was only 10 and a half or so, and she passed away a couple days after that. So it was a really tough couple of days, tough Christmas, and then not too long after that we had to move in January, not by choice. So yeah, the December 23rd is a bit bittersweet for me. Ironically, one of our cats, Nyonko, was born on December 24th, literally the day after our Luna had passed away. And it was interesting. We just happened to be looking at our local SPCA, and she's the one. And she happened to just kind of by a string of fate be born the day after our Luna had passed away. It was just so devastating at that time because it was so sudden. And of course, for a cat, 10 and a half may seem like it's like up there, but cats could live till they're close to 20. So I felt like, I don't know, she just got sick all of a sudden. And of course, our other kitty that we had adopted shortly before her, she just passed away about 6 months ago. She lived till 18. So when you think about it like that, oh my gosh, I wish we could have had Luna just as long. But unfortunately, sometimes things happen. It's kind of sad and unfortunate, but, life doesn't always go how we've planned, or, we just kind of have to roll with the punches sometimes. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of touch on that because it is somewhat of a significant date for me. But now the December 24th is my kitty's birthday, so we look forward to that. Unfortunately, we found out my grandfather passed away on December 15th. Just went downhill pretty quickly. And I will start off the video by saying I wasn't really close to him for a number of reasons. Wasn't by choice, but I'll get into that a little bit. But my mom and my aunt would be on Zoom with him, I think pretty consistently, week to week, for I don't know, the past year and a half or so maybe. Kind of talk to him, and then just within the last couple of weeks, I just happened to kind of peek in, and I had no idea that he was kind of that far off. I could barely understand what he was saying while he was talking, and then he started sleeping through the Zooms, and it was honestly very reminiscent of when my mother-in-law passed away. I think towards the end I mentioned in my last podcast episode that she had been in a coma, I think for, I don't know if it was a couple of weeks, but she at the end was just unconscious. And so that's kind of what it reminded me of, kind of seeing that. I know my mom didn't really want to believe that was kind of coming, but he was also 98 years old. I probably should have mentioned that earlier on, but yeah, he was 98 years old. So he got to live a long, full life. And I feel like there's just something more tragic about if someone passes away young, like if they're middle-aged, 40 or 50, versus, someone's like, it's sad, but, at least they got to live a long life. A lot of people don't get that. So, I was grateful that he got to live a long and full life. I wish we were closer. He just wasn't close to a lot of the family. That's maybe a story for another podcast, but I hardly saw him. My art skills I had gotten from him, or I'd like to think that I inherited his artistic abilities, I should say. And so I'm grateful for that, and I felt like we could relate on that level. But he was kind of like an absentee grandfather. Him and my grandmother divorced, which was, when I think they divorced in like the 70s, which divorce back then was regarded quite differently. It wasn't as common as it is now. I mean, the 70s was a different time. So I think it's, as time kind of went on, it became more and more common, but back then it was definitely not common. So my grandparents were divorced, and my mom kind of had a difficult relationship with him throughout her childhood and life and whatnot, and he was kind of an absent father in a lot of different ways. Maybe I'll have her on another episode and we can kind of dive into that a little bit more, because I feel like it's, again, it's her place to share her experiences. I'm just kind of going off of what I've been told and what I understand, but basically my grandfather was someone who did not really, was not the one to take the first step in developing a relationship, at least with us, his grandchildren. And so, and I feel bad admitting this, but when he passed away, I wasn't that shocked, just because I remember my husband's mom going out the same way. And, his age, of course, logically, it's only a matter of time. So, I think more is I felt bad for my mom and my aunt, and I was worried more about how they felt and how other people felt. And I still am a little confused, because I felt like I should be, just devastated and really, really sad. And I actually came across a couple of letters that he wrote to me when I was younger. It had more of the typical kind of grandfather vibes, like love you, my dear granddaughter, a lot of typical verbiage, but his actions didn't always really match up to that. And I don't, I don't have any hard feelings against him or anything. It's just, I guess we just weren't close. And I think part of what I started to feel was kind of mourning for what I wish I had, or, if that makes sense, because my other grandfather, my dad's dad, had passed away before I was born. So I never really got, to know what it was really like to have like I guess, typical or traditional relationship with a grandfather. I was close to both of my grandmothers in, different ways. My dad's mom was more just that typical grandmother, made me pancakes, played games with me and stuff like that. And then my mom's mom was kind of more of kind of like a surrogate mother figure when, my mom wasn't always around. Like, she would take care of me and stuff like that. So the dynamics were different, but I was closer to both of them. And I felt their passings more acutely than I did my grandpa. I didn't really, and I told my mom this a while back too, and I'm like, I just don't think I'd really have too many feelings over it. I mean, of course, my husband checked in on me and he's like, hey, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm okay. I was a little bit shocked, but I think as like the next day or two went on, I think it was more not anger, but I kind of wished maybe we had a closer relationship, maybe wish things were different. My grandfather, for lack of a better word, was kind of a shut-in. He didn't go to funerals, weddings, graduations, birthdays, holidays, maybe the couple of token holidays here and there. But that was about it. And my husband and I have been together for almost 17 years. And my husband can like count on one hand like how many times he's seen my grandfather. Like, that's how seldom we saw each other. And I, of course, wish that were different, but he just didn't really make the effort to be a part of the family. Like, he would always say, oh, well, my family this, and, love you and this and that. But sometimes it feels, the actions have to match what you say. It has to match, because otherwise it seems like the words are empty if what you're doing isn't lining up, if that makes sense. I know it's late right now, but and so I don't know. So I had mixed feelings. I felt like I should feel sad, but I didn't. I think I more was just sad that, I wished we were closer. And it's funny because I feel closer to my husband's grandmother than I do my own grandfather. I think even closer to his grandfather more than my own grandfather. And I got to know his grandfather. See, how many years were we together at that point? 6 or 7 years or so. We were together before his grandfather passed away. Yeah, 6 or 7 or so years. So I still, got that a decent amount of time to get to know him. He was a very, very kind and humble man, and just, yeah. So I think that was the closest that I got to really feeling like what it was like to have a grandfather like that. And, I'm incredibly thankful. And I told my husband, like, yeah, I think I'd be more sad if his grandmother passed away, because I've known her for more than half my life when I think about it, because I met her when I was 16 and I'm 33 now. I've known her more than half my life. And I think I've seen her more than I saw my own grandfather, who lived in the same state. And I think it's just, I just felt it was just such an incredible feeling to have that feeling of closeness. My husband's grandmother is 101 years old, so only a couple years older than my grandfather. And she always made me just feel so welcomed and included and part of the family. And I'm so thankful for that. And even though now all of my grandparents biologically have passed away, that's kind of nice to have that connection, and because I know not everybody gets that. And I think I'm struggling to feel like, I think I felt worse over my cat who passed away 6 months ago. My oldest Kai, we adopted her when she was 3.5, and so we had her for 15 years. I felt more devastated over my cat's passing than my own grandfather. And I know it sounds terrible, but that's just unfortunately the reality. And I think it's just because I hardly saw my grandfather. And it's funny, I thought about it because I had written the speech for my husband's grandfather when he passed away. It was back in, I think also 2013. And his family just really appreciated it so much. They were really touched by it, and it just made me feel just incredible that they, were able to share in the story that I had shared. And I'm conflicted. My aunt had asked me, if I'd like to say anything, and I did say that, I'm thankful that my grandfather shared his artistic talents and gifts with the world and had an idea for a picture. I haven't decided at this point in time if I'm gonna speak at his funeral, and if I do, it'd probably only be just a couple words because I don't have a whole lot to say. I mean, and I know my brother had voiced the same thing, that the fact is that we hardly saw our grandfather, not by our own choosing, but by his, especially when we were growing up. He just never really attended events. He never just made a lot of effort, to be quite honest. And I feel like, of course, any sort of relationship is a two-way street. Both parties have to make some sort of effort. But I feel like a lot of pressure is put on kids, especially then, anyways, to, for us to make that first step and call and thank your grandfather, call your grandfather, take that first step. Where I feel like when you're a child, your older relatives, they should be the one to at least initiate and foster that relationship. It shouldn't be on the child to do that, to take that initiative in action. The adult should be the one that kind of leads and fosters. I mean, when I think about it, the type of father that my grandfather was, it shouldn't surprise me that he was a similar type of grandfather, just kind of absent. And again, I don't have any hard feelings against him, but I never saw him. So I just didn't have too many feelings about it. And it's kind of like my husband said, his mom's mom, his grandmother and his mom's side, he wasn't close to her either, or his grandfather and his mom's side, for kind of similar reasons. His grandfather and his mom's side was a similar type of father that my mom's dad was. And so I know that he can kind of relate to that. He wasn't close to his grandparents on his mom's side because they were pretty spread out. His family was kind of like estranged. There was a lot of dysfunction and whatnot. And his grandfather and his mom's side was also abusive. And his grandfather and his mom's side passed away when he was 10. So he said that he only has a few memories and he just didn't really see him much. So I kind of liken it to being a similar situation. It's just kind of, it is what it is. If you don't really know them, how can you have too many feelings about it? So I'm kind of in a limbo as to whether or not I want to say something. TBD, to be decided. But yeah, I think it was just kind of mourning the relationship that I wish we had. I mean, I have things that he's given me throughout the years, like his art pieces, which I keep and are sentimental to me because I'm a sentimental person, and letters and stuff. But I don't know, it's really hard because he just never really made an effort to really be a part of our lives or see us, as I mentioned, he didn't attend weddings or graduations or really a lot of anything, except for maybe a holiday once in a while. I remember when we were younger, though, he had these weird ideas when it came to Christmas gifts. Now, don't roast me on this because wait till I explain. Now, he would send money in differing amounts to myself, my brother, and my cousin. We were his only grandchildren, and he gave them more money, and his reasoning was because they were boys and they would be taking girls out or something like that. And so now I just kind of get a good laugh about it, but it just like, it kind of wasn't funny then, because I'm the like second oldest grandchild. And so I'm like, the reasoning behind that didn't make sense. I just feel like it, if you're going to give people monetary gifts, especially your grandchildren, it should just be the same. There shouldn't be any weird logic behind that. And I'm not trying to come across as ungrateful, but I do think that that it should be fair. And honestly, it kind of came across as kind of sexist, to be honest. So yeah, it was kind of weird. And oftentimes he would misspell my name. Oftentimes he wouldn't remember my husband's name, and my husband and I have been together for years. So it's a lot of things like that. Like, are you even my grandfather? Like, you can't even remember how to spell my name. You can't even remember my husband's name. And this went on for many years. Like when he was younger and there was no like dementia, nothing like that. Like, he just didn't, I don't know. He just didn't really get to know us. He didn't really follow our lives or keep in touch. And so kind of had, kind of that in a nutshell. It's been intense. The holidays have been intense. I had a work event at the beginning of the month, and then we drove to the Bay Area to visit my husband's brother. And then last week my husband went to the Bay Area to pick up some furniture for my dad's house. And then of course, this coming weekend is Christmas. So, and I'm still I'm ready to have all my gifts bought and wrapped and stuff. But I'm just like, at the same time, I'm just like, I'm really, really burned out. And I'm really hoping in January to be able to have that opportunity to kind of step back, because I'll be honest, I absolutely love Christmas, but I don't love all the stress and everything else that kind of comes with that, especially if like there's like other things going on. And my husband and I haven't even had a chance to just sit down and watch like a Christmas movie together. We might be doing that like after, just because there's just like, he's been working a lot, I've been doing my projects, and we've had like a lot of these obligations come up over the weekend and whatnot. And it's like, I find myself just tired a lot. And I will be honest, I think I've overcommitted myself to quite a bit these last couple of months, especially. So I'm hoping to kind of in January kind of be able to take a step back and be able to take that time for myself. So yeah, as much as I don't want Christmas to end, because it just feels like it's just everything has been a blur, I also kind of want to just relax. But I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I have seasonal affective disorder, like pretty bad. It's usually the worst between January and March. It's after the holidays. For some people, it may start sooner. But it's kind of that lull period where it's cold, not a whole lot is happening. So I'm like, oh, like it's just kind of, yeah, it's just kind of a lull, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's kind of depressing. Like, and then as it gets closer to spring, it kind of tapers off. But yeah, so I think that's also, it's like, there's something called, for any of you who may go to conventions and be a part of that scene, like there's something called the post-con depression. And I kind of feel like it's kind of like the post-holiday depression, in January. That's kind of what I kind of seem to go through. And this year, just in particular, it was just, there's some things that are just kind of outside of your control, some things that come up, and, it's just kind of, you kind of have to roll with the punches, so to speak. But yeah, so it's been crazy, and I think a lot of people can relate to trying, you want to please everyone during the holidays, and sometimes it's not going to be possible. And I remember when my husband and I first got together, we would juggle like three families during the holidays. And part of me misses that, but part of me doesn't. I think up until about a year and a half ago, I really lamented kind of and would wish that we had a larger family. Like, I see big families get together and I'm like, oh, that'd be so nice. And everyone seems to get along and have just a great time. And our families are either spread out or really small but now I found the joy in just having last Thanksgiving, not this past Thanksgiving, but last year, we just kind of sat around in our pajamas each day until or during the day until dinner time. And I remember thinking, this is kind of nice just to chill and just kind of not have the stress of being somewhere. Because while on one hand, I'd love to like have like a big family and and all the festivities that comes along with it. On the other hand, like just having like some peace and quiet and just having a day to where I don't have an obligation, which is few and far between nowadays. It was just so nice. So so sometimes I struggle with that a little bit. And I remember my mom was telling me how like when, in her day, like when she was growing up, people saw several different families. And I'm like, I'll be honest, like I don't know if I really enjoyed that because I couldn't be fully present because the moment I sat down, I had to get up and go somewhere else. And so I feel like I'd rather, go to one and just be fully present. And I find that to be more enjoyable. And I also think that, in terms of compromise, because that's a lot of times what's what you have to do during the holidays, no matter how you do it. But it also depends on the people involved. Everyone has to be on board, especially if you want to develop new traditions in certain days and whatever. Everyone has to be fully committed and on board for that, because otherwise it's not going to work, because you can't control other people. But yeah, like I love traditions and thinking about developing new traditions, but yeah, everyone has to be on the same page. And of course people have different commitments and different schedules and whatnot. And so sometimes it's just like you come to the realization that unfortunately, you just can't please everyone, no matter how hard you try. It's never going to happen. And so I think you have to kind of get comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense, and determining your priorities and, commitments. I think this season to me has been a lesson in me learning that I've taken too much on. And I think part of me, staying busy helps is combative to depression, because I do feel like if I'm in a lull and don't have anything to do, I think I kind of, and that's kind of why I try to keep busy during, the colder months, the winter months, where I'm more prone and apt to seasonal depression. Yeah, it's been very, very chaotic. And I'm just kind of like looking forward to like having more of that time to like read a book a night, because I think up until about a couple months ago, I would spend a lot of time reading, but now, my days are just, also filled with just like cleaning up the house and trying to get everything organized. And, part of me really enjoys it, but also, I've had to put a lot of things aside. And so I think, and maybe I'll touch on this in the next episode, do a little New Year's intentions and what I hope to accomplish for the next year. But I will say, I didn't, complete everything I set out to, but like, for example, writing my book, but I did launch this podcast, which is on my resolutions for last year. And I didn't launch it until August, but I already have a good several episodes out, and I'm pretty proud of that. And I still have a little bit of work to do on Duolingo, and I'm hoping to do that in the new year and prioritize that. And I got started on my healthy habits journey and all of that, and I could proudly say that I accomplished a lot travel-wise, because I did want to make that a priority, and I want to continue to make that a priority going into 2023 as much as realistically possible anyway. But I got to go to Germany, I got to visit Southern California and a couple of places that I always wanted to go. I got to go to an X-Files convention in New York. We got to drive to Oregon, and then we got to go spend a couple weeks in Thailand. So I feel very thankful for these experiences, because I didn't always have that opportunity for many years. I've always wanted to travel, and I didn't have the opportunity to do so until maybe the last 3 or 4 years. So, I'm just feeling really thankful. We have a couple of things in the books for next year, not nearly as many, and I'm okay with that, because I do feel like I need a little bit of a break, because I do feel like I do get a certain amount of travel anxiety, especially leading up the trips, making sure everything's done, and a lot of the logistical things and planning a trip. And don't get me wrong, I have loved all of my trips, but sometimes it's like, for those of you who can relate, sometimes you need a vacation after that vacation, if that makes sense, right? Or before, or maybe, like a vacation before the vacation. But I'm pretty proud of what I've set out for, and I think in the coming year, I'm going to change up my YouTube channel a little bit. I kind of leaned more into fashion earlier this year, but I'm feeling like I think maybe I want to do more general lifestyle, maybe do some recipes and, do some like day in my lives, or, different things like that, some fun things, maybe try some things, experiment. I did do some art, not nearly as much as I did, during COVID, just because, going back to somewhat of a pre-COVID world is a thing now, where, there's social festivities and plans. And honestly, I'm grateful for that. It's funny, I'm an introvert, but I dealt with some of the worst depression during COVID, and not really being able to have my routine that I was used to, and seeing friends and going to work, and some of the things that kind of, traveling came along with that. And so I'm so glad to have that back, but also it's like the busy, rushed kind of lifestyle. I'm like, oh man, having to try and find that perfect balance again can just be difficult. So yeah, that's a little bit about my year in a nutshell and what I'm hoping to accomplish in 2023. And of course, I have a few more episodes to get through with you guys, talking kind of like a little bit about my past and life story. And then I think, I'm hoping to bring on I have a few ideas for bringing on some guests onto the podcast. And of course, if you like to be a guest, let me know, reach out to me. Love to have a conversation. So I have a few ideas for that. I'm hoping to kind of bring that in maybe, as we get further into the new year. It may not be closer until spring, summer. Just kind of, maybe we'll have a couple of bonus episodes. But I'm glad I stuck to a once a month schedule, and this episode might be a little bit delayed in getting out. And I'm trying to be okay with that. I try to stick to a schedule, but I'm trying to be okay with the fact that sometimes things happen, and, and not get down on myself for it. So yeah, it's been a crazy past couple of months. And for those of you who follow my YouTube and who've kept up with some of the things that I've been doing, I spend a lot of my free days outside of work filming or recording for the podcast or cleaning or, prepping for the holidays. And it's, I need to be okay with just not doing anything, even, I think that stems from my childhood because for so many years I did summer school every single year. And a lot of times during the year I had enrichment like after school. So I in a way was kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of groomed into the hustle culture, so to speak. Kind of like, if I'm not being productive in some way, what am I doing with my life? And I think, there's become more awareness as to the toxicity of hustle culture and how, stress kills. It really does. It affects you in so many different ways. I mean, people talk about, what you're eating or how much you're exercising, but people aren't talking about how stress can affect your body and so many other areas of your life, your mental health, because these things all matter. It's they're all a larger picture of your health. And, if you're not getting adequate sleep and if you're stressed out all the time and your cortisol levels are high, it affects you. And so, I'm still struggling to kind of try and find that balance because much of what I was taught growing up was your worth kind of being defined by what you do for a living or how much money you make, And so I feel like, what you do for a living, while it's a big part of your life, there are so many other aspects that define a person. There's so many things that I do enjoy, that I do make money off, and some things that I do that I just genuinely enjoy, that I want to be able to start prioritizing again and getting back to. And so some of my favorite ways to relieve stress personally, or even if it's just like taking an hour to say, have a bath with a bath bomb or I don't know, light a candle and and read a book, and just very chill moments like that where you can give back. Me going to the chiropractor earlier today was definitely an act of self-care, and it could be a lot of little things. I missed Thailand because the cost of a massage was equivalent to like $15 US. Was it $15 US or $30 US? It was one of the two, but it was very, very cheap comparatively to what we pay for a massage here, a decent massage here in the US, which could be like close to $100 a person. So I, whenever I can afford that luxury, I will treat myself to it. I don't get my nails done all that often. I usually wait until I'm going to travel and, I'll get them done just so I don't have to worry about things breaking or whatever when I'm on my trip. But generally speaking, I do my own nails, and then, if I see a good Groupon deal, I'll buy a Groupon and I'll treat myself to get my nails done because I generally never want to pay full price. So I try to look for deals. And so, so like it could be like little things. So I think the important thing is to think about what makes you feel good. And it can be like a little thing, giving yourself a free, like it could be early in the morning. If you're a morning person, you wake up and you just want to have an hour to chill and read and have your coffee, then do it. I'm a night owl, so I get my reading and stuff like that done at night. I do exercise at night as well. I'm a night owl, and my creativity usually sparks at night. Like right now, I'm recording this podcast. It's almost 12:15 in the morning. But that's sometimes just when I have the time, or when I have when that creative muse just strikes me. I just kind of try and roll with it. So that's kind of been my holidays and past couple of weeks and months in a nutshell. So where are we here? We are coming up on almost about 45 minutes. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode here, because I think I wanted to focus on, some past memories, some important dates in history for me, what the holidays have looked like previously, what things are looking like now, what I've been kind of going through. So it may sound like a little bit of a stream of consciousness, but I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you have a great Christmas and a happy holidays. whatever you celebrate. I hope you just have a great time off with your family, or just, if you're chilling alone too, that's totally okay. Again, I have, mixed feelings about it, but sometimes I try to, allow myself to enjoy that free time. And so if I'm not spending time with family, I look at it as as an opportunity to have some time off for myself. So if you are one of those people in that boat, use this as an opportunity to get DoorDash, Uber Eats, have a nice spa night, a night in with a nice book, or whatever it is that you like to do. Just treat yourself this holiday. So if you're spending it alone, treat yourself. Spend it with a friend. It doesn't necessarily have to be a family. I once spent Thanksgiving with a loving friend group who since moved away, but I have had a couple of holidays where that have kind of deviated from the norm because of work and various things. And yeah, I just I like to try and find joy where I can, even if it's, the circumstances aren't ideal. So I hope that helps you guys. And so I will see you guys virtually in the new year. So thank you guys so much for listening. I can't wait to see what the new year will bring, and take care and have a happy, healthy holiday and a great new year. I will see you guys soon. Bye.